When I was 4 months pregnant, the man who had promised to cherish me forever shoved a printed contract across our dining table, informing me that I was on my own. He casually explained that carrying our child was my personal biological choice, so every single expense, from my morning sickness medication to the hospital birth, would be split down the middle. What he did not realize was that I was not the weak woman he assumed I was. For days after I signed his cold agreement, he walked into our apartment and found my wardrobe emptied, my wedding ring on the counter, and my pregnancy bump completely hidden under a tailored coat. He stood paralyzed with shock as I handed him divorce papers, begging to know where his child went. Before I continue this painful journey, let me ask where you are tuning in from today. What is the weather like in your corner of the world? And what time is it as you listen to my story? If you believe in standing up for yourself when the people you love betray you, please consider subscribing to the channel right now. Your support truly helps me share these deeply personal stories with the world. Our relationship had started like a fairy tale back in our university days. Logan was a brilliant finance student who seemed so thoughtful, constantly bringing me coffee during my late-night studio sessions while I helped him edit his business papers. When he proposed in front of our entire graduating class, I cried tears of genuine joy and believed we would build a beautiful life together. The early years of our marriage were sweet as we moved into a modest apartment, saved our money, and dreamed about starting a family together. Everything changed after Logan earned a massive promotion at his corporate investment firm, bringing home an incredible salary that slowly poisoned his perspective on life. His mother, an overbearing woman who looked down on my career as a freelance graphic designer, moved into our home and constantly criticized my choices. Suddenly, Logan began complaining about the price of my skincare products, growled whenever I transferred money to help my sick father, and acted as if my financial contribution to our marriage was entirely useless. When I first showed Logan the positive pregnancy test, I expected tears of happiness, but he barely looked up from his expensive cognac. He bluntly told me that his workload was far too intense for him to accompany me to routine checkups and ultrasound appointments. His mother immediately stepped in to confiscate my makeup, claiming the chemicals would harm the baby, while demanding that I continue cleaning the entire house every single day because pregnancy was no excuse to be lazy. I endured the humiliating treatment for months, constantly telling myself that things would improve once Logan held our newborn child in his arms. However, the boiling point arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening, when Logan pushed his postnuptial financial independence agreement toward me. He coolly stated that since half the genetics belonged to him, he would only pay for half the diapers after the baby was born, but my lost wages, dietary supplements, and delivery room bills were entirely my own burden. Instead of screaming or throwing a fit, I pulled a pen from my bag and signed the document with steady fingers, accepting his 50-50 proposal effective immediately. I then opened my phone, calculated every expensive suit, tie, and watch I had purchased for him over our 3 years of marriage, and demanded he immediately Venmo me his half of the difference. He called me petty for bringing up past gifts, completely unaware that his cold mathematical logic had just permanently destroyed my love for him. The very next morning, I quietly contacted a top family law attorney named Clarissa to discuss my options for a full divorce and complete custody. Over my 5 years of successful design work, I had accumulated substantial personal savings and owned property in my own name that Logan knew nothing about. Furthermore, I had spent months secretly documenting his corporate compliance violations, his verbal abuse, and the shady bank transfers he made to his mother, giving me absolute leverage over his career and reputation. While Logan was away at a high-profile business dinner, I packed up my office and cleared out my personal belongings from our home. I drove 50 miles to my parents' suburban house, where my mother held me close while my father vowed to support me through every legal battle ahead. We crafted a brilliant strategy that would allow me to walk away with total custody of my unborn child, while leaving Logan completely powerless to retaliate against us. For 3 days, Logan assumed I was merely throwing an emotional tantrum at my parents' house, never bothering to check on my health or inquire about our child. He bragged to his office colleagues about how he had put his pregnant wife in her place using modern financial logic, completely ignoring the disgusted looks his coworkers gave him. It was only when my attorney arrived at his doorstep with final divorce terms that the reality of his situation finally crashed down on him. When Logan saw the stack of photos exposing his secret dinners with other women and transcripts of his illegal corporate trading, his face drained of all color. Clarissa smoothly informed him that if he refused to sign the divorce papers awarding me full custody, every single piece of evidence would be submitted directly to the federal authorities and his executive board. Terrified of losing his high-paying career and going to prison, he desperately demanded one final meeting with me before signing his life away. We met at an upscale Manhattan cafe where I arrived wearing a beautifully tailored trench coat that completely disguised my growing pregnant silhouette. Logan stared at my seemingly flat stomach with wide, terrified eyes, frantically asking if I had somehow ended our baby life during the 3 days I was missing. I looked at him with complete emotional detachment, pulling out a recent ultrasound photo to prove our child was thriving before informing him that he had permanently forfeited his right to ever be a father. He broke down in tears, offering to tear up the financial agreement and hand over his entire salary if I would just give our marriage one last chance. I calmly explained that some mistakes could only be made once, watching his trembling hands sign the legal papers that stripped him of his family forever. As I walked out into the crisp afternoon air, I left him sitting alone with his ice-cold coffee, weeping over the catastrophic wreckage of his own creation. With the divorce finalized, I threw myself entirely into my true passion, accepting a high executive role as the creative director for a global luxury conglomerate. I entered into a strategic protective arrangement with a brilliant, wealthy CEO named Julian, who protected my privacy, supported my career, and eventually fell deeply in love with my strength and resilience. When my beautiful son Noah was born, Julian was right by my side in the delivery room, holding my hand and shedding tears of pure joy. Meanwhile, Logan was quietly terminated from his investment bank after internal audits confirmed his compliance violations, forcing him to liquidate his entire savings to avoid criminal charges. He was blacklisted from Wall Street, forced to sell his luxury home, and ended up working a mid-level logistics job while living in a tiny rented apartment in Queens. His mother was left alone in her bitterness, realizing too late that her cruel manipulation had destroyed her son's future and cost her a grandson. Years later, while enjoying a sunny day at a theme park with Julian and 3-year-old Noah, I spotted Logan standing near a food stall in a cheap corporate polo shirt. He watched from a distance as Julian carried Noah on his shoulders, both of them laughing joyfully while holding my hand under the afternoon sun. Logan did not try to approach us, simply turning around with a look of quiet resignation as he realized he had lost the greatest treasures of his life. I walked away from that park knowing that standing up for my self-worth was the greatest decision I had ever made for my child and my future. If this story reminded you of the importance of knowing your value, please subscribe to the channel right now. Don't forget to click on the next video appearing on your screen to enjoy another powerful emotional story.